Okay, hello. Hi, Dr. Curatola.
Hello, Stephen.
How are
so
you?
Sorry for the delay, but I'm here.
No problem. And we delayed it till 8, and Dr. O'Malley is going to join us also any moment. So,
Okay, great.
but we'll get started anyway. We already did the disclaimer, and we already did the introduction. Oh, have you been here? Have you been here since 7:20?
Myself,
Yeah.
I got here about 7:40.
Okay, got it. Okay. We delayed it till 8. Okay, no problem. So what I'm
That's
going to do
great.
is we will start now. Let's see. We played the bios already, and we played the disclaimer already. So I am going to go right into starting to ask you questions. Okay.
Great.
And we're going to also take audience questions as well.
Wonderful.
Okay. Let's see if our audience is still alert and with us. Okay. So first question, Dr. Curatola. For someone that you are, wait, I just want to make sure we're recording and everything. Let me ask Nancy, are we all set? Are we recording everything?
It says recording.
It says recording. Okay.
Yes, we are recording, and I'm still looking for Paul as well. So as soon as he comes on, we'll pull him on.
Okay. So Dr. Curatola, so what is the basic protocol? If someone comes to you and they say, I'm 10 years old and I want my teeth to be good, and I'm, give me my advice for the next 25 years. What is the basic 1-minute protocol about everything from brushing your teeth, flossing, checkups? What are the basic core things you give advice to people of how to take care of their teeth?
Yeah, that's a great question, Steve. The first thing is, and I go over this in my book, The Mouth-Body Connection. But the most important thing is I see the mouth as a mirror of what's going on in the whole body and the gateway. So whether you're 10 years old or you're 100 years old, the protocol is the same. We want to look at doing a thorough, we want to do a thorough review of their dental condition and their medical condition, looking at connecting the dots between what's going on in their body and how that might be manifesting in their mouth, or how what's in their mouth might be causing some of the problems they have in their body. So, for example, at 10 years old, one of the biggest things I look for is airway health. Are they breathing? Are they getting oxygen? The 3 most important things that children need are good nutrition, of course, water, hydration, and nutrition. The second thing is oxygen. And the third thing is sleep. And if they have a narrow arch and they have a high palate, or they have a very deep bite, this could be affecting their breathing. And that could have profound effects on their systemic health.
And what about the protocol of what they're supposed to do? What do you tell them if you just giving someone the 1-minute review of what they should do to take care of their teeth?
Well, I have 4 cornerstones of oral health, right? The first one is, what are they using to take care of their teeth with? Now, that's a whole topic in itself, because there's a lot of, toothpaste was invented by soap makers, essentially, over 150 years ago. And a lot of toothpaste is actually harmful for the mouth. So we want to get them using and understanding that the bacteria in the mouth are an essential part of their immune system, essential part of their digestion, essential part of their, even their ability to make nitric oxide. The microbiome in the mouth helps the child and the adult produce nitric oxide, essential for cardiovascular health, essential for immune system health, essential for blood sugar regulation. So we want to look at nutrition. The other thing we want to look at is any habits they may have, grinding, clenching, and all these things are signs of parafunctional habits that are fueled by stress. And a lot of children are overstimulated. They're glued to digital devices that they never get to turn their nervous system off. They're going 100, and that has, believe it or not, that has effects in the mouth. And then finally, we want every child to have a healthy exercise is just as important for oral health as it is for physical health. So those 4 cornerstones, what oral care products they're using, what their nutrition is like. Nutrition's a cornerstone of oral health. How they manage stress. Do they digitally detox? And are they getting healthy exercise? Are four essential foundational things that I want to look at, because fixing a filling or doing gum treatment, or even fixing, as I was just saying, the airway, is meaningless unless they have a good protocol at home. So we take the extra time to really go over that.
And what is the at-home protocol that each person should do? Should they brush their teeth once a day, twice a day, 3 times a day? Floss?
Generally twice a day, and why do you brush your teeth? Well, because food can accumulate. I was on the Dr. Oz show and he was asking me, should you floss? Should you this? Should you use dental picks, or what do you use? And I said, you know what? What's really the most important thing is like cleaning between your teeth, and the outside surfaces of the teeth, of course, tops of the teeth, inside of the teeth. But and I laugh because most people don't brush their teeth for 2 minutes, and we recommend 2 minutes. Why? Because you really have to remove food and debris that, if it remains, it's like the garbage on in between tenements on a New York City street in the summer. Eventually it starts to stink and then the rats come out. So it destabilizes the balance of the microbiome if you don't adequately clean your teeth. Then that's generally twice a day, when you wake up, from the night before, and also before you go to sleep.
And what about flossing? Should we do
So
that?
flossing is a good question. I mean, a lot of people don't floss incorrectly. They snap the floss down to the gum, and you can actually do harm. So there's been a big controversy over the past 5 years of to floss or not floss. There are so many new dental devices that are better than that little string that you stick between your teeth. For example, there are interproximal brushes, rubber tips. We have a device in our practice called a water flosser that we recommend to patients that has a rubber tip, and so water flossing is kind of like a water pick, and it also helps to remove debris between the teeth without having to use dental floss.
And that water floss, should we do that once or twice a day?
Twice a day.
Is that for the gums, or is that?
Well, yeah, that's also, gums and teeth. Why do you use the water flosser interproximally? Well, you get the debris out that's on the surfaces of the teeth, in between the teeth. That's interproximal. And what else does a water flosser do? It's like a hydro massage. So it helps to improve circulation, stagnancy in the tiny little capillaries that are around the teeth in the gingival tissue. So it's almost like a hydro massage, in addition to removing debris between teeth. So we like it for that reason, because it's hard to massage the gums with a toothbrush. And so these new devices like the water flosser is a very effective oral care tool.
Okay, so brushing twice a day, water flossing twice a day. What about tongue cleaning? Is that something?
Yes. So, that's a simple thing to do. People try to camouflage bad breath in so many different ways with all kinds of products that try to camouflage the symptom and don't get to the root cause. The overbuilding of bacterial film on the tongue can lead to halitosis, bad breath. So a tongue scraper is a very effective device, and most people will be very surprised at using that device, because you really can see all of it. And it's an effective tool, because the dorsal part of the tongue, the top part of the tongue, is loaded with these tiny little taste buds, and all of these papilla on the surface of the tongue in between there can, a lot of debris can harbor between there, and a simple tongue scraping can be really effective, and your mouth will feel a lot cleaner too.
Once or twice a day with that?
Twice.
Okay.
Do it as a normal routine. And the water flosser is kind of a new tool, but we're big fans of it in our practice. All the doctors and the dental hygienists in our office recommend it, because it's really an effective tool for the 2 reasons that I said, both removing debris and also helping to massage the gums.
And what about getting cleanings at a dental office? How often do you recommend that?
Well, that's a very interesting question because, they used to say, brush twice a day and see your dentist. Brush twice a day and see your dentist twice a year. Well, what we've learned in the research that's been done over the years is that for people who are struggling with periodontal issues, by the way, which can be linked to a lot of other systemic problems, there is they should get their teeth cleaned once a season. So many adult patients should not get their teeth cleaned twice a year. They really should see their dentist once a season. A dental cleaning is one of the most inexpensive dental procedures and the most preventative and good for your health.
And what about getting dental x-rays? How often, and assume we're going to a dentist that has the low radiation x-rays, how often do you recommend doing this?
And that's another very, very big debate because dentists, unfortunately I find a lot of dentists are x-ray happy, and they use dental x-rays to look for decay interproximally between the teeth. So they do these bite wing little films to look for decay between the teeth. And there are other devices that cause transillumination. So we have devices in our office that actually transilluminate the tooth with light where we could see decay without having to take an x-ray. So a full series of x-rays is recommended once every 5 years. And really the technology has moved very, very steadily toward the CBCT, the three-dimensional cone beam, as one of the most effective devices ever introduced in dentistry. It's a 3D look at teeth, bone, and in the jaw. There's so many things we could see in a cone beam that could never be seen, even in a panoramic dental x-ray.
Now, the 3D cone beam, it's called a 3D cone beam. It's a CAT scan.
Yes, it's a CBCT. So it's a cone beam computerized tomography. It is a form of a very, very low exposure because it's really digital. We don't even need a door like you would with a CAT scan or a room that's lead line. So cone beam is very, very low exposure and gives us a phenomenal look 3D at what's going on in the mouth.
And you're saying we need this every 5 years or more often?
No, I think a cone beam is fine even longer. I mean, if your cone beams are usually taken on demand, but instead of a full mouth series, I would do a cone beam because a cone beam gives us a better look 3D. Remember, x-rays are two-dimensional, they're flat. So instead, yes, I would recommend a cone beam every 5 years rather than the 18 pictures of the full series, because we're getting a lot more diagnostic information.
Okay, now I don't know medical or dental, but the word CAT scan to me, means radiation, which means cancer. So how come you and other dentists, I understand why from a diagnostic point of view, you'd want a 3D cone beam CAT scan, but why are you not very concerned? Hello, doctor.
So I want to just say again, a cone beam is not a CAT scan. It's computerized tomography. And that is Paul's in the car.
Hello.
How you doing?
Welcome, Dr.
Good
O'Malley.
to see you.
Hello.
So a cone beam is actually, like what I was saying, it's the equivalent to a very, very low exposure CT scan.
So how much radiation do you think you're getting if you do the CDCT versus the old
CBCT versus a full series?
Yeah.
The cone beam has less exposure than a full series. That's the amazing thing, is that they've gotten so sophisticated with these devices and the sensors that, as I said, we don't even need to have, in the old days when you took an x-ray, you had to have lead line walls and doors and all this. We don't need any of that now.
And is there any technology coming where they're going to get rid of the radiation completely?
That's a great question.
Good question. We're not there yet. There's very few. The cone beam was a huge advance because, believe it or not, when we wanted to do a 3D scan, we used to send people for a whole CAT scan of their head, maxilla, and mandible. In the early days of dental implantology, when we wanted to see if a patient had enough bone to place an implant, they would get these much higher exposure radiographic treatments that have come way down. So it's very, very interesting how the technology has progressed. I mean, could we see human bone with flesh over it without an X-ray? Not at this point.
Okay. Dr. O'Malley, just to bring you up to speed, I've asked Dr. Curatola for general protocol and what he has said, and you could tell me, Dr. Curatola, if I got this right, to brush twice a day for 2 minutes. He's recommending we floss with the water floss device that he has, get cleanings, adults like 4 times a year, tongue cleaning, yes, and probably twice a day. And he's recommending like every 5 years, the CBCT cone beam. So that's the general protocol we've discussed as I'm continuing to ask questions. Anything you want to add or change to that?
No, I think that's right on target. I didn't even think about the CBCT being done every 5 years. So I think that's a good preventative thing to make sure there's nothing growing, lurking, hiding, etc. Because if they are in the jawbone, they can be pretty toxic and harmful to the overall body-wide system. So it's a good thing to look for and keep an eye on.
Okay.
So we're really finding dental X-rays far less useful. We're talking about bite wings that would show decay between teeth. Now we have transillumination. We don't have to expose a patient to bite wings. There's some really terrific transillumination devices to look for interproximal decay. Then we were talking about CBCT. For example, I could have a cyst in my jaw, but on a 2-dimensional X-ray, here is the outside cortical bone of the lower jaw, the mandible, and here's the inside, and where my head is the cyst. You'd never be able to see that, even on one of those panoramic X-rays. They're 2-dimensional. So 3D is going to give us information that could prevent real problems down the road for some patients.
Right. I agree.
Okay.
I agree. And I like the idea. I mean, my area that I've done a lot of research and development into is how do we bring about balance in the bacterial dysbiosis, let's say, or the bacterial imbalance that happens in the mouth. And it's sort of the missing ingredient because we're great at burning it out, cutting it out, killing it, finding it, getting rid of it, all these things. But how do we bring the mouth back to balance again? So that's where I worked really hard to try to find some all natural things and patented them to help, not as a pitch to my company, but for people that are looking for a way to help rebalance their mouth, they really should look at ways to kill the harmful bacteria naturally, but also what they can do to rebalance is use a good oral probiotic. And the Great Oral Health Company, mine has 7 strains in it, and 3 of the strains are meant to help hold the other strains to the mouth and to the tissues longer than if you just dumped 2 or 3 strains in there. So, it's an attempt to do things that bring about a nice natural balance, because if we don't do that, we're fighting. I think it becomes an uphill battle over time. Wouldn't you agree, Barry?
Yeah. Now, and Paul, I'm so glad to hear you use the word rebalance.
Yeah, rebalance.
For so long, dentists, and I have to say that Paul and I are exceptions, because the majority of dentists are still stuck in the germ theory of kill everything, just kill it. And we're both, and the great thing is that we're both students of the oral microbiome. I began research in the oral microbiome in 2004, and I was going in a prebiotic direction. And Paul, I know you were going in a probiotic direction, but everything was about recognizing the importance of this beneficial ecology that not only keeps us alive, but it aids in digestion. It produces nitric oxide.
Exactly.
It helps with so many different things. And dentists, dental hygienists are all like, kill plaque, kill plaque, kill plaque. They parrot this old science that is still perpetuated by the major oral care products manufacturers, where people like Paul and myself who develop products that support and nourish this indigenous ecology that's as unique as our DNA.
Okay.
That's
The
right.
oral microbiome. We
You're right.
both went to dental school. Yeah, the oral microbiome transports minerals to your teeth so you can remineralize. And it
Right.
transports molecular oxygen to your gums and takes ionic oxygen and free radicals away from the gums. So these germs that we used to call are actually an essential ecology, but we have to respect it. You know, my mantra for the past 20 years now, almost 20 years, has been make peace with your microbes.
I
Make
love
peace
that.
with your microbes. That's my mantra. Make peace with your microbes. Don't kill them. Just nourish them.
like that. Well,
And Paul had the magic word. And I love the prebiotic strains that you've come up with and everything. But a probiotic, I'm a prebiotic, but prebiotic and probiotic are all nourishing and supporting this essential ecology that gives you not only oral health, but systemic health as well.
Okay, let me ask you, I have like 100 questions, so give me short answers so I can get through it and get okay?
We'll try.
All right.
We'll try.
All right. So the general question, a lot of people are thinking, this is silly. We don't need to have dentists. I have a dentist. He's a great guy. My mother, I've been using him for 35 years. He's really likable and I like him a lot. So why should we listen to, we already have a dentist and he seems like he knows everything really good. So what's different about the way you practice dentistry than the dentist down the street who's going to retire soon, but he's a really, really nice guy?
Great guy. You know, that reminds me, it reminds me when I went to dental school and we had a family dentist who was like, he was dating my aunt, my father's youngest sister. And he was a great guy, super charming, and everybody loved him. And I got to dental school and I remember calling my mother and saying, Mom, nothing in my mouth looks like the textbook. So a dentist is judged by everything but the quality of his work, Steve.
Okay.
Yeah, that's a good point. It's you know, it's nice that they have a nice personality, but you know, if someone comes to see me and their teeth are in great shape, everything's holding up well, etc., I'm not going to necessarily coach them on too many things. I'll ask them, what are you doing? Good. Keep that up. You're doing a good job. I mean, that's kind of, they've found a balance for themselves, you know, but you know, when I was in Texas years ago, there was a colleague out there practicing and sadly, and it's rare because most of the dentists are really good and they try their very best, but he just did not have very good hands. He probably should have been a physician, a non-surgical type physician or whatever. But, you know, so I would see a lot of his dentistry and things like that. And I just basically said, everybody that would come in and say, yeah, but he's such a nice guy. And I thought, okay, well, you know, the bottom line is where the rubber meets the road. Are you feeling better? Are your teeth healthy? Are you losing teeth? Do you have a mouthful of root canals that really weren't needed maybe in the first place? Those are the things to look at because that's a whole nother subject, Jerry. I mean, the effect of root canals long-term in a person's mouth.
Yeah, and I'm sure Steve will have a few questions about that.
Yeah.
But you know, I think one other part of this, and sorry, Steve, that Paul and I are bringing a lot of good topics up, but you know, it's really important to recognize the importance of eliminating toxicity and inflammation in the mouth. And unfortunately, a lot of dentists were not taught about that in dental school, and they place mercury fillings and they do root canals and they don't look for hidden sources of toxicity and inflammation in things where there's necrotic bone, cavitations, and what have you. So it's really important to make sure your dentist is keeping up and understanding the importance of the mouth-body connection.
Okay.
I think so. You know, I can answer one other way on that question too, is that's a good point, Jerry, is are they doing continuing education? Are they still passionate about what they're doing? And what are their thoughts on holistic dentistry? If they shut it down or slam it down in a hurry, then you might ask them further why they feel that way, etc. And you can give them pieces of information, because I've found the vast majority of dentists, once they sit down long enough and read something that makes sense, they'll evolve to it, including holistic,
Yes.
biologic dentistry, etc.
You know, what's interesting is that a lot of patients often ask me if I can call their old dentist and just
Yeah.
speak to Chris. They went to their dentist and they told them about holistic concepts like they hear on your program, right? The Real Truth About Health. And they get these concepts and they get a lot of information from you, Steve. And they go back to their dentist and their dentist says, oh, I don't believe in that. I don't believe in that. And I always find that that's ignorant to not believe in science that may have emerged that they didn't hear in dental school. And I think some of them may be afraid of it or afraid to change or used to doing things the same way. But I totally agree with Paul. If they're reluctant to embrace topics that are, I mean, I thought root canals were great when I came out of dental school until I read the science about how they dysregulate your immune system and all these other studies that emerged about root canals producing endotoxins and things like that.
Okay, so
Right.
what are dental cavitations and what could we do about them?
Jerry, I'll since you're more of an expert in that area, I can recognize them, but you've done more research on that.
Yeah, no, for sure. So
free.
dental cavitations are by the way, it's a made up word. So it was coined by an orthopedic surgeon in 1931. He came up with a word for a hole in the jaw, very commonly in areas where third molar teeth, wisdom teeth, were pulled, extracted. We like to say extracted. And we used to think the bone just automatically heals like this. And now we know that bone regeneration needs to be promoted and supported with a graft or a scaffold for the bone to anastomose and regenerate. So a lot of people have their wisdom teeth extracted. They never have these areas treated properly after the extraction. And they form these holes in the jaw. They are a source of chronic inflammation, and they are like petri dishes for pathogens. So we see everything from Lyme spirochetes, candida, mold, parasites, all kinds of the heavy metals that can accumulate in these dead areas of bone where the patient does not report fever, pain, or swelling. So, and what's interesting, it seems like everybody has them these days. It's because we're able to see them with the newer technology like CBCT, which is a 3D look at.
Which is so great. And I remember Boyd Haley speaking so much about these, and he said, you know, they've never found one that doesn't have a sludge of toxins and heavy metal in them. It's just like it's a black hole nothing can escape from in the body. So in a sense, maybe that's a good way to detoxify the body if you do have one cavitation, but it doesn't seem to just stay there by itself. But he always said they're just nasty.
Yeah. And, you know, energetically, these third molar areas, there are meridians throughout the body, and we know there are meridians from teeth to every part of the body. But what's interesting is the cavitations that are most common in the areas where the wisdom teeth were removed. And by the way, anyone who's had a wisdom tooth removed should have a CBCT. And the only other problem is not just getting the CBCT, but having someone experienced to read it. We do virtual consults to read these all the time, and I'm happy to do that. And we can put up a link for that. But the CBCT is really the gold standard for being able to see these lesions in the jaw, in the third molar areas where teeth may have been extracted.
And if there is something wrong, what do you do if you have a cavitation that has sludge in it or something? What do you do?
Well, there's a protocol to treat it, and I created a surgical protocol using an erbium laser. Okay. The second thing, many dentists used a dental drill, which generates heat and friction to drill into the jaw into the hole, which I always found, a little barbaric. And so I had been working with erbium lasers for alveolar bone around periodontally teeth that had gum disease. And we reapplied that to using them to access the hole with as little trauma to the body as possible. The second thing we do is, I always take a sample of what's in there because I like to know what bugs are in there. And so we do a pathology sample, but then we disinfect it. And how do we disinfect it? Ozone is very effective. I love ozone because ozone not only disinfects, but it also draws blood. So we want to get blood because when bone is necrotic, what we call cavitational osteonecrosis or jaw osteonecrosis, JON, when the bone is dead, it doesn't have a good blood supply. So we want to get blood because that's how your immune system can work effectively in these areas, and also help bring the cells that regenerate bone, the osteoblasts, to work. So another thing that we do in addition to disinfecting is the third thing, which is stimulate what we call mitotic division of the osteoblast. In English, that means get the cells that make new bone to divide. And so we grow bone back, and we help foster the body's regeneration of bone in these areas where there was a dead hole. So get in there without trauma, clean it out thoroughly, get the bone to regenerate, get the lesion to heal.
Great, thank you.
Now, Jerry, what are you using to get the bone to regenerate?
Oh, so thank you. So we use we draw blood and use a part of the blood, platelet-rich fibrin, so it's PRF.
Okay, PRF.
And then we also, I use a bone mineral in addition. In large lesions, you really need a bone mineral because the platelet-rich fibrin will break down too fast for the bone to have a chance to fully regenerate. So we get relapses if you don't use a bone graft with that.
Oh, that's brilliant. And so, yeah, it's a scaffolding essentially.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
So what people should understand is the material that we put in there, most of it, which is biologic from your own body, it's kind of a scaffolding on a building. As they're, replacing the bricks on the facade of a building, then the scaffold comes down and the new brick is there. That's kind of what we do in the cavitation sites so that the body can regenerate.
Got it.
Well, Jerry, why don't you just come down to my office in California and we'll hang out and have a good time, and we'll help save lives all day long. It's warmer here too.
I know. Where are you? Where are you, Paul?
I'm in Encino, California, just outside of
beautiful.
Burbank and Beverly Hills.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I'm glad Steve brought us together. Steve, I know you have a lot of questions, so keep going.
Okay. Just quickly, is there anything to say about braces? Should children just go to an orthodontist, get braces? Are there pros and cons? Is this like, everything's fine, or is there something that we need to know about this if we have children and they're told they need braces?
I'll jump in on it for a second, and then Jerry, let me know your thoughts. I think it's important to find an orthodontist that is working with the development of the jaw as the child is growing, and also is taking into account the airway. So there's a way that they can check the airway space. They can make sure that they're rounding out, expanding the upper palate or jawbone and the lower jawbone, especially at an early age. If they do that, basically what they're attempting to do is try to create a jaw that's similar to what our ancestors had before we introduced sugar to our worldwide distribution center that began to create overbites, underbites, and crossbites based on the research of West and Price. So an orthodontist that can expand and create this expansion, I think, is very, very helpful for the development of the child, short-term and long-term. And generally they do it through expansion. Years ago, when I would have orthodontics in my age group, they would pull the middle teeth and pull everything back. Well, that just jammed everything back. So it could affect the airway. So you have more people with sleep apnea, dyspnea, problems like that can be completely prevented and avoided early on.
Yeah, I couldn't agree with Paul. He basically said exactly what I was going to do. Too many orthodontists of the past were focused on getting the teeth straight, and sometimes they did extraction therapy, and that's like shrinking the cage. And we have a colleague, Felix Liao, wrote a book, 6-Foot Tiger, 3-Foot Cage. The 6-foot tiger is your tongue, and the 3-foot cage is your mouth, especially after orthodontics, where they shrink the cage because they pull teeth to quote unquote make room for the teeth to look pretty and straight. What they really should be looking on is exactly what Paul said, which is expansion, so that teeth have room and the airway is protected and enhanced. So
Right.
guiding the growth of the jaw in orthodontics is more important than just moving teeth around so they look pretty and
Right.
straight. The airway and the adaptation of the maxilla, the upper jaw and the lower jaw, the mandible. The other thing I totally agree with Paul about sugar is I'm a huge proponent of Weston Price and of his work. I think there should be a statue of him in front of the American Dental Association.
Agreed.
Research on the ADA, that this man was talking about the fact that more civilized diets, which were higher in refined carbohydrates and sugars, actually led to deformities in the jaw and damaging the genes and the expression of those genes in subsequent generations. He was talking about this in the early 1900s. He was talking about epigenetics, which is a very hot topic today.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, and he showed, right, that, I mean, he did the experiments with rabbits. He'd feed them a high sugar fructose diet, and he would see within 3 generations, the rabbits started developing cross bites, underbites, crowded teeth, malformed arches, etc. So that's a tough pill to swallow, that what you're doing today can, malform your great grandchildren. But there seems to be good evidence and support, because the fossil findings show nice, robust, round arch forms, potentially open airways as a result. And it would put orthodontists out of business within 3 generations, but I don't know that that's going to happen that fast, sadly.
What do you do to help people who grind their teeth at night? What's the problem with grinding your teeth, and how do you prevent it?
Well, all right, I'll go first this time.
Yeah.
Grinding teeth, again, is a symptom. Okay. And very often it's a symptom. And so what do you want to do? Do you want to, and this is the thing about how Paul and I look at dentistry, is we go for the root cause, right?
Yeah.
What is driving that clenching and grinding? Believe it or not, many times, including temporal mandibular joint disorder, many times it's the airway. It's the area. People are clenching and grinding, and of course stress can fuel that. It's a parafunctional habit, but a lot of times when sleep apnea is not snoring, even though snoring is a symptom, there are many people who have sleep apnea who don't snore at all. There's about 1 billion people on the planet suffering from obstructive sleep apnea. Great majority of those cases have to do with the airway right in your mouth. And the tongue is like the rubber stopper in the neck of a wine bottle. So if they have a compromised airway and they have apneic episodes where they stop breathing, the brain goes crazy. It triggers a lot of clenching, grinding, and all kinds of behaviors, because it's like you're suffocating in your sleep. Another thing it's linked to is bedwetting in children. And adults just have to get up and go to the bathroom all the time. So everyone should get a CBCT. Everyone should get a home sleep study. It's a great diagnostic tool to see if you have it.
And
I agree with Jerry on that. And, interestingly enough, it's the $8 billion question. Why do I grind my teeth, doctor? And everybody, so when we don't know what the answer is, we always say it's stress, of course.
Right.
Because, we have to give some answer. But the truth is, we don't fully know completely, but I suspect it's a genetic type of response, again, to people are having a difficulty catching their breath. It helps them open their airway, and they just can't shut it off. And so they keep rubbing and grinding their teeth. But I have this other hypothesis, Jerry, and I think somehow it stimulates cerebral spinal fluid so that it keeps floating through. I can't seem to find any research on that, but it just seems to make sense to me. And for
That's a
some
very
people, they need
interesting,
that.
a very interesting hypothesis, and it makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
Are there any
So-
devices we should use if we're grinding our teeth?
I think you have to
I
get to the root cause and then decide what device to use.
I think I think there's a couple of things. Sometimes one can do a very, very mild, what's called equilibration. It's a balancing, but it has to be done very skillfully. So you can actually see where the interferences are on the teeth. I've gone over this on some other videos on my freeholisticdentalcourse.com presentation. But the main thing that I see happening is Mother Nature developed our jaws so that when we rub side to side and front to back, mainly our front teeth catch almost immediately. So when we're rubbing and go forward, it deprograms the deep muscles that we clench with. If the back teeth are catching at the same time as the front teeth, in other words, if you rub side to side, anybody watching this could do their own exercise. If they can feel their side teeth rubbing while they're rubbing side to side and not just their front 6 teeth, top and bottom, then they would be more prone to clenching because those muscles don't shut off. And they can do destructive forces on their teeth. And those are the ones that will be watching this. Go look in the mirror and you can see wear patterns on your front teeth. And your teeth, you'll find exactly where your habit is. You'll find where they fit together like a puzzle piece. And you'll be amazed, but that's where you're rubbing them, typically at nighttime, and probably to open up that airway and maybe stimulate the cerebral spinal fluid.
Yeah, I always tell patients it's very important. And Paul brought up a great point about your occlusion, your bite. And if you have a malocclusion or bad bite, and you are, as he said, grinding in the back and not in the front, you're overstimulating muscles that they can't turn off. But I always tell patients that your eye teeth are the steering wheel of the car. And it's called canine guidance or canine protected occlusion. So if you do not have this canine guidance where the eye teeth actually allow the jaw to separate, so when you go to the side, you get this canine rise. And that's why it's important. I see a lot of dentists, oh, you grind your teeth here, slap on a night guard, and now they have this plastic night guard. And the problem is that unless the occlusion is balanced, as Paul said, you're really treating the symptom and not the root cause.
Right. 100% agreed.
Okay. Should we have our wisdom teeth pulled? What are the pros and cons of that?
Jerry, you take that one.
You want me? Oh, I thought you were going to take that. So, again, my personal opinion is far too many wisdom teeth get extracted than need to be. I had a young patient today whose mother brought her, and her dentist said, "Time to get the wisdom teeth out, like it's a rite of passage." And I looked, and they were not only were they not even fully formed yet, of course, in a 12-year-old, they weren't fully formed, but at the same time, they looked like they had more than enough room to erupt normally. So this, you're bringing up a loaded question, Steve, which is why I think Paul and I probably, again, we are very aligned, and I feel like we're kindred spirits. Far too many wisdom teeth get extracted that need to be. Now, that's not to say that there are wisdom teeth that are malpositioned that are never going to erupt properly and could be causing problems with the rest of the dentition. So it really has to be looked at. And again, not to sound like a broken record, but a CBCT, a 3D scan, is really important to see get far more information than two-dimensional x-rays.
Oh, that's great. Yeah, because I know when I was back in the day in dental school, it was looked upon like this. the child's 16 years old, 17 years old, the roots haven't really formed. That's the best time to take the wisdom teeth out, because within 10 years, they'll be married, have a family, the roots are down along the jawbone. It's much more difficult, more dangerous, etc. So just take them out. And I'm like Jerry, it's like, wow, I have a lot of patients with their wisdom teeth and they're in their 70s. And as long as they keep them clean and healthy, they do quite well. If there's room, if
Right.
they're laid in at an angle against the teeth just
What
in
we call
front of them,
horizontally impacted.
or horizontally
Yeah.
impacted where it puts pressure or it can ruin the root of the tooth in front, then that's a good candidate to
Yes,
remove those. But they got to remove them properly, otherwise they're going to create a cavitation.
exactly.
Okay.
The one other thing I wanted to say is, you know, for those that are worried, oh, there isn't room for the wisdom teeth. Well, that's a perfect opportunity for expansion of
Right.
the jaw. And that's where there are devices for children now, like called MyoBrace and others, that help with the guided eruption of the teeth and the proper expansion and room for the teeth to erupt.
Right.
Should we get root canals?
Oh boy.
No. Easy one. No. A root canal at best, in an emergency situation where somebody fell and broke their tooth, you know, that is, and a nerve is exposed. You know, what's the emergence, you know, root canal is such a, you know, it was modern root canal was introduced, and, you know, a lot of it right after World War II. And around late 1940s, a lot of work done at Boston University. And the concept was we save the tooth. Well, like anything else dead in the human body, it's going to necrose and it's going to produce endotoxins, which are bacteria and bacterial byproducts. And eventually it will dysregulate the immune system. So I never look at anything in the world of endodontics as more than temporary, because it's not a permanent solution, and it's going to bring on a lot of serious problems down the road. A sterile tooth that has a nerve taken out of it because it's exposed is at best a temporary procedure. A root canal on a tooth that's sitting in pus is a ridiculous choice. And you can end up trapping very serious pathogens that become really super pathogens down the road.
And Jerry, what are you finding? What's your thoughts on? Because I have some patients. I'm sort of in the middle road on this one sometimes, because some people would, let's just say, some people would rather die maybe earlier, if that was the case, than lose their teeth. So I sort of leave a little bit of flexibility there, but
Right.
if they do decide to have a root canal, at least I'm encouraging them to get the gentle wave procedure and the biolaser procedure, at least disinfecting it.
Right.
I've tried to get those companies to do a long-term study. They haven't yet, to see, will the bacteria still encroach from the periodontal side inward. I mean, it's one nice thing to clean out all the dentinal tubules. Those are all little side channels along the main canal of a root that can harbor bacteria, because traditional root canals, when they clean that little stringy piece out of the root called the nerve, they end up packing debris laterally, and they lock in these bacteria, which then mutate and become really toxin producing opportunistic bacteria, and they dump toxins out through the side of the tooth, down along the ligament along the side of the tooth, down into the bloodstream, etc. But I'm wondering, with the gentle wave and with the biolaser, if that's a long-term effective thing, because even the darn implants are showing some bacteria around them too. So it's like,
Right.
wow, what a challenge.
Titanium metal implants are definitely produce endotoxins. So you have root canals and metal implants both producing endotoxins, and really the only biologic choice that has many advantages is the zirconia implants. Unfortunately, a lot of dentists have trouble restoring those. There aren't many components for those. So the engineering part of being a dentist is very difficult with zirconia implants. They take longer to heal, but the bone that grows around ceramic implants, and I'm sure, Steve, you have some questions about that, so I don't want to jump ahead, but the bone that grows around ceramic implants is very different than titanium. Titanium is more like scar tissue bone, walling it off, sclerotic bone, whereas zirconium, ceramic zirconia, which is actually a white metal, but it's in the world of ceramics. You have vascular bone with a blood supply, and again, like I said, it's really important. The lifeblood of the oral cavity is saliva. The lifeblood of the bone is blood.
It's so cool you say that, because yeah, in my own practice of the last 5 years using zirconium implants, the surgeon that I use and getting those back, I find those to look cleaner, they look healthier, etc. I love to restore them. The big fear they have is that, well, if you chew too hard, you could crack these things. Well, that comes down to proper bite adjustment and occlusal handling.
Yes.
I've never had one break in my practice.
Now,
And
we've
so
been
I'm
doing-
of the same.
We've
I
been
would
doing full
recommend zirconia.
mouth reconstructions with ceramic implants, and I've partnered with my master ceramist, Roberto Rossi, to create screw retained bone level dental implants that are made of zirconia with amazing aesthetic results. So it is possible, but I totally agree with you. You need 3 things to be a good dentist. You need a good head, good hands, and a good heart. Those are 3 H's.
Yeah, right.
So,
No, that's great.
so what about, so assume you don't want to get a root canal. What are your options? And tell us again, are implants always okay? And what are the right type? You started that, but
Yeah.
go again.
I think I want to go back to what Paul said, which was that there's now advances in endodontic therapy and root canal therapy utilizing, I think every endodontist should utilize laser and ozone and a laser, because you can do a greater disinfection. The only thing that I would caution is that anything dead in the human body will break down, including your tooth. We used to think the teeth are like these inner things. That was endodontic therapy. Goes back to the Egyptians, and the Mayans did endo too, the Mayan tribes. So anything in the human body will break down and necrose. There is a lymphatic system, a circulatory system, a nervous system, and a skeletal system in a tooth. A tooth is a living, breathing organ.
Right.
It's not this inner thing that you can hollow it out like you're doing taxonomy.
Yeah, it's not a horn.
With a bird. Yeah.
Right.
It just doesn't work. And the original root canal, they even used something called Sargenti paste. You probably remember, Paul. It had formaldehyde. They were putting formaldehyde. They were embalming the tooth in the human body. People got very sick from that, and very quickly that became banned. That material was banned by the government. So
and back in Weston Price time, they used to fill it with what was called silver points. They were a little bit malleable, and they would put them down along the main canal with some cement and everything. And they were leaking all the time, completely leaking. But I think it would be interesting research to see, even with a dead tooth, is it going to, with those proper protocols, biolays, ozone, gentle wave that actually acts like a vacuum. Gentle wave sucks the debris out of that main canal instead of packing it laterally. Will those things short-term solve things until we get even more biological with the implants? The zirconia ones are looking good. So it's a decision that the patients have to do a little of their own soul searching on as well. Wouldn't you agree?
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more. And I always give patients, just for the record, we are required by our license to give patients alternatives to care, just like you were asking, Steve. What are the alternatives if the patient doesn't want a root canal? And I will always tell the patient, here's the science on this, here's the science on this. You have to make the decision. If you want a root canal, we can send you to one of the best endodontists in our community who is using a laser and ozone, and they can perform that. I don't perform root canals in my practice because I think root canal at best is a temporary procedure at this at this stage of the game. In the future, I see pulpal regeneration with stem cells and things like that as the future of endodontics. And I've really been trying to stay on top of the research that's emerging in that area, because dentists are in the business of saving teeth. Okay, we're not in the business of taking teeth out. We're in the business of saving teeth. But you don't want the treatment. It's like the operation was a success, but the patient died. Okay, you don't want that as well. So the alternatives that you asked, Steve, are a dental implant, and we can talk about implants if you have questions, but ceramic implants have far more benefits over metal implants. And really, the studies that are emerging right now on endotoxin production, corrosion of titanium, and because saliva is actually a weak electrolyte. It's almost like a battery to anything you put metal in, especially titanium. There was a study July 21, 2021, that was done that found distribution of the titanium particles from dental implants found in the liver, the kidneys, and the lungs. So we are starting to see, we're seeing 5G causing titanium implants to heat up in the jaw. That's a study from Germany. And we're seeing other studies that metal implants block energy flow. They block meridians, and just like a root canal does, and a cavitation does. So these are the kinds of things that we start to think about, because we are energetic beings. And this is not, I remember when I did a program at Harvard Medical School in complementary and alternative medicine, and they put up the tooth organ relationship chart. And it looked like voodoo. Like, wait a minute. This upper molar here is linked to the breast and the thyroid and da 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 da. And then I started to experience with patients how these actually work, and how the body is a bunch of flowing energy. And so we have to be cognizant of that.
Yeah, and I've on those meridian charts, I've heard that some research has been done too, where they can flow tracers from the tooth and let it flow outward, and then they can scan it later, and they found it would go right where they said it would go. It's pretty amazing, and so more research I think needs to be done with that. But Jerry, you probably know one of the main fields that I do is biomimetic dentistry, and so that's an emerging field where we're rebuilding the teeth in layers and sculpting it. So if a person comes in and they have deep decay, it used to be just like children with wisdom teeth. We go, oh, well, it's going to be a problem in the future. Might as well take it out now. Dentists are trained, oh, well, it's close to the nerve. We might as well just do a root canal, because they're only thinking of the tooth itself. They're not thinking of the overall body system. So now a big paradigm shift, as you know, Jerry, as well, is that if we clean the periphery out, and we use the little dyes to tell us that we've removed all the decay, if we clean that periphery out and that tooth tests alive with cold testing, we can leave a fair amount of decay. We don't want to leave the infected decay there, but we can leave some of the residual decay there and seal over that, and the body will heal it and remineralize it. So thereby, for example, I had a patient 4 years ago came in, and she had rampant decay through her whole mouth. And she was told by one dentist she needed 9 root canals. Another one said 12. I tested the teeth. They were all vital. I said, well, let's just see how we do. And it's been 4 years, no root canals, and we restored all of her teeth. These are stories that we hear all the time in the community that's doing sculpting, reconstructive, biomimetic type dentistry, because even the holistic doctors are trying to do the best they can, but they're still using the age-old tools of grind a tooth down, demolish it to put a crown on there, and they're ruining 80 to 90% of the tooth. That's nothing against the
living,
dentist.
breathing tissue.
living, breathing tissue. It's nothing against the dentist. This is what we're taught, and they believe
Exactly.
they're doing the best they can, but they're on a learning curve. They just need to inch up a little bit higher, and they'll see there's much better, more viable ways, because a crown has a 33% chance that the tooth will need a root, or the tooth will die within 10 years. And that's just abysmal. And we don't want that to be happening. It might happen in the 9th year. So it's disrelated, and we don't really see it as dentists. We go, oh, well, we did the best we can. And they did. But now we can rebuild teeth in layers and minimally invasively. And that's good news for your audience, because there's hope out there for people that are being told they need root canals. If that thing's not abscess and it tests alive, there's a good chance they don't need a root canal. Amen.
And the conservation of tooth structure has been a guiding principle. I've been practicing biomimetically for, I have my 40th anniversary of being a dentist in 2 weeks. 2 weeks. I graduated June 2nd, 1983.
Wow. All right. You got me beat by 1 year. You're looking good.
Yeah, you too.
Steve,
you. I know you got a lot of questions. We're giving very long answers, and I'm sorry.
Yeah.
People have a little bit of a desperation. They don't have access to this information except from their own dentist. So I actually would be good to really give just 1-minute answers, because we'll get some more things.
Okay.
Will do.
They really want to get a perspective on this, because they really have no one to bounce this off. So
excellent.
What about crowns? Is that totally okay? What's a crown? Is that okay to do?
Paul just was starting to talk about that. So why don't you take that, Paul?
I would say no, there's no need to ever have a crown unless you're replacing an old one that's leaking and defective. There's better ways now. We can rebuild the teeth in layers. If we rebuild it in layers, it creates a stress-reduced restoration. And then if we need to mimic Mother Nature's enamel, we can cover maybe a portion of the tooth with porcelain and thereby keep the vast majority of the tooth, because we'd much rather have a failure of a restoration than a failure of the tooth overall. And that's how that design is done. So that's all about your audience can read up on biomimetic dentistry. And minimally invasive dentistry. That's what it's about. Avoid a crown at all costs, unless the tooth is totally demolished all the way around already.
Right. And the only thing I'd add to that in a minute or less is, remember, dentist, the D stands for doctor, the EN stands for engineer, and the TIST stands for artist. Doctor, engineer, and artist. That's what attracted me to dentistry many years ago. One thing that I would add to what Paul said is always err on the side of conservatism. Well, crowns can be indicated. Far too many crowns are done than need to be. There are much more conservative procedures, such as veneering, inlays, onlays, and even the layered buildup of teeth with some of the adhesive materials we have at our disposal.
Right.
Great. And what about veneers? What are they? And is that something that's appropriate to get?
Paul?
Yes, veneers are absolutely can be done. They're very, very, very minimally invasively done in the right hands. Some dentists over prepare the teeth. That's a tough one. So people that are watching this, you have to sort of investigate who you're seeing. If they can do it minimally invasively, all you have to do is ask them, how much tooth structure do you take off? And if they kind of blow you off, like, oh, well, that's not important. Okay, go to the next one, because you want to find someone that's going to plan things out in the laboratory. Because when you do a veneer is a thin coating that can fit over the outside of the tooth and the edge of the tooth. And it's meant to improve the color, shape,
strength
and positioning of the tooth overall. And it can be done sometimes additively. In other words, if a person's teeth are angled inward, you can build it outward. And so you have to, then you don't have to hardly remove any tooth structure at all. And that's really, really a superior way to go about it. But you have to find someone that knows how to do the planning. They send to the lab. They do what's called a wax up, where they wax things up to really lay out the design. And, you know, you don't want to just jump into someone's chair right then and there, and they're going to start doing veneers because they may over prep the teeth. And if they do, then it's more like a crown. And then you run the risk of needing a root canal in the future up to 33%. Once again, properly done veneers, especially if you seal the teeth underneath, you should have minimal sensitivity while you're doing the procedure and shortly thereafter, with one caveat: people that have severely worn teeth that grind their teeth, as we talked earlier, horrifically. Sometimes when you restore their teeth, no matter what you do, they're going to have prolonged sensitivity, but it always goes away.
Okay. What are your thoughts about fluoridated toothpaste, and what are your thoughts about whitening teeth? Are either of these appropriate, and are they a health issue? Please comment.
Yeah. So, all right, I'll try and do that quick. All right. Fluoride is a hoax. Okay. Fluoride was introduced, and a lot of the studies on the working with fluoride were done in Grand Rapids in the 1940s. And fluoride is a toxic halide chemical. Fluoride toothpaste has a poison warning on it. Why? Because in 1988, Procter & Gamble launched a product called Crest Sparkle. It was fluorescent blue and had sparkles in it, and it tasted like bubble gum. And fluoride fatalities in children went up 280%. A lot of people didn't know about that, because that little piece of information prompted the FDA to mandate a poison warning on toothpaste with sodium fluoride. That took them 10 years. And in 1998, the poison warning on toothpaste was introduced, which says keep out of reach of children. If more than a pea-sized amount is swallowed, call poison control right away. Why are children putting poison in their mouth? Under the guise that this chemical stimulates teeth to remineralize. And they do remineralize. It converts our natural teeth and bones, which are made of a mineral called hydroxyapatite, and it converts it to something called fluorapatite. And nobody ever talks about the difference between hydroxyapatite and fluorapatite. Hydroxyapatite has a little flexibility. It gives our teeth and bones some flexibility. Fluorapatite is rigid, very hard, like this glass. And if I drop this on a cement floor, it's going to break in a million pieces. Well, lo and behold, it does the same thing to your teeth and bones. Your teeth and bones are up to 33% weaker, or more than 33% weaker. That mineral, fluorapatite, is weaker tensile strength. So when my mother tripped on the stairs of our home in the 1980s, she didn't get a bruised hip, she got a broken hip after 25 years of water fluoridation. Fluoridation was never accepted in Europe because for the simple fact that there are numerous studies linking fluoride to osteoporosis. And over 60, I think 70 studies now globally linking drinking fluoridated water to lower IQ in children. So it's time to end the fluoride experiment that we thought was such a heck of a good thing. And there are dentists and dental hygienists and dental students who are fed this stuff every day, that fluoride is good. Everybody needs fluoride. Fluoride is not a nutrient, everyone. It has no nutritional value. It is not safe and effective, and it's linked to a lot of systemic problems. So should you use fluoridated toothpaste? I give a very long answer, but the answer is no.
And what about
That's
white?
That's a great answer. And then Jerry, I'll let you come back on the whitening in a second, but
all right.
even in my own products at Great Oral Health, my toothpaste, I spent about 12 years. I guess I wasn't very bright, but it took me about 12 years to develop. But there is no fluoride in that thing, and there never would have been fluoride in that, because we have better alternatives to help remineralize the teeth. As Jerry was saying, hydroxyapatite, we can actually place hydroxyapatite in the formulation to help the body get its own chance to remineralize itself. And Jerry, lastly, I read studies over in China where the elderly women, their backs are breaking because they bend over a lot anyway, but they get severe osteoporosis, and it's
Yeah.
because they drink so much tea and they have a high concentration of fluoride in their water.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it's self-evident out there. And even our own American Dental Association, apparently in 2004, came out with the bold statement to say there is no systemic benefit from drinking fluoridated water. That same year, I believe it was the county of Los Angeles, or Los Angeles overall, they decided to fluoridate the water. What the heck is going on? It makes
Well,
no
it is,
sense.
and you know, people don't realize this. The fluoride that gets dropped into the water supply, they have to wear hazmat suits to put it in there. And
Yeah.
it's not even fluoride. It's an element. It's hydrofluorosilicic acid, the same stuff they make sarin gas from. And it is so toxic. It is a toxic vapor that comes off of it. So they literally wear hazmat suits, dump it in the water for no real systemic benefit. It doesn't work. There are fluoridated communities with higher rates of decay than non-fluoridated communities. And I have spoken about this many times over many years. And incidentally, Paul, I spent 25 years trying to develop, and I have a product called Revitin, and it's nutritional. Basically, it was nutritional and homeopathic, and now it's completely prebiotic to nourish and support the natural oral environment. We just did a double-blind, 40-patient, double-blind clinical research study, and we blew Colgate Total out of the water because and that's loaded with stannous fluoride, and reducing inflammation and reducing film thickness of the biofilm to a healthy, a healthy microbiome in the mouth is a clear odorless film. You don't even know it's there.
Yeah.
And an unhealthy biofilm, or microbiome, which is another made up word in 2002, but that's this sticky yellow film on your teeth in the morning. That basically is out of balance, a microbiome that's out of balance. So
well, Jerry,
let's talk about teeth whitening.
I know this is for the entire podcast, but I'm going to call you because I want to collaborate with you on some of those things.
With pleasure.
I think we can change the suffering worldwide with the right product lines, et cetera. So whitening, I would tell you, the whitening products out there, my viewpoint is there's a lot of good ones. You want to try to get ones that are pH balanced the best you can, and then be using remineralizing toothpaste that have hydroxyapatite to help keep the original strength back, because when they whiten, they create micro lesions on the surface of the teeth, but the body does remineralize that. So it's not long-term harm unless it's high concentration.
Totally agree. I just, there's a lot of talk about nanoparticles in products and toothpaste products. And there's a lot of studies that have emerged about the danger of nanoparticles damaging DNA in soft tissue and cells, because they penetrate the cell membrane and can enter the nucleus of the cell. So I caution against that. But teeth whitening, what is teeth whitening? It is oxidative. So it is an oxidative process. And what it does, teeth whitening, is it penetrates the enamel rods, opens them up, and then oxidizes what we call intrinsic stain in teeth. There is a study from 2006, Georgetown Medical Center. 4 women were diagnosed with squamous cell carcinoma, side of the cheek, under the tongue. And they were not smokers, not drinkers. They didn't have HPV virus, the 3 biggest risk factors for cancer, oral cancer. 3 biggest risk factors: alcohol, tobacco, and HPV virus, which is the biggest one now. But one thing they had in common, they all were bleacherexics. They were all bleacherexics. They all used the home whitening products, and they were bombarding their mouths with this oxidative process. And what they found is that oxidation and over oxidizing, right, destroying the antioxidant protection, causes DNA damage in the cells of the soft tissue. And the cells go from normal to abnormal to cancerous. And that's the danger of the overuse of these home whitening products. And with this oxidation, which is usually a form of peroxide, hydrogen peroxide, carbamide peroxide, which is a derivative of hydrogen peroxide, but that's teeth whitening in a nutshell. And so the only way that I recommend teeth whitening, and I everybody loves it. And yes, as you get older, I know your enamel gets a little more translucent. So being able to whiten your teeth safely should be done in a dental office where we isolate the soft tissue, whiten the gums. And then what I do is I use an antioxidant gum mask after we whiten. So that's the nutshell on whitening. Whitening can be harmful if the bad products used at home that are not controlled, and people can just keep doing it without any control, just like exposure to fluoride, by the way. People, 62% of children have fluoride damage right now called fluorosis. By the way, it's not just their teeth, it's their bones. And 62%. Why? Because we can't control the amount of that drug people are getting, right? Because they get it in toothpaste, they get it in mouthwash, they get it in food they eat in a restaurant made with fluoridated water and drinking fluoridated water. So you can't control it. So please be aware that you may be getting too much of this that you don't even want in the first place.
Okay, what works to keep our teeth strong? Are there supplements or diet that is good for that?
I
Not
would
everybody
say,
at the same time.
just go ahead, Gerald. But I would say that you want to be making sure that you're taking the fat soluble vitamins, keep those in. Last week, I was on the podcast with your show, Real Truth About Health, and I was talking about plant-based diets, vegan diets. They can be deficient in the heavy fat-rich vitamins.
So many
A,
kids don't get
E,
enough
A,
omegas.
and omegas. They also are deficient in phosphorus, calcium, magnesium, and some studies show arginine. So if they have a problem with arginine, plaque's going to really heavily stick to their teeth, etc. So those are some things that I would recommend along that line, and everybody should take those anyway.
Yeah, absolutely. You know, I did some research back in 1999, 2000. I found a study from Japan, a Japanese dental researcher biopsied diseased gums, and he found that they were deficient in 2 key nutrients. One of them was vitamin C. We knew about that because sailors on ships got scurvy from deficiencies in vitamin C. And actually, a great dentist did so much research on vitamin C deficiency. His name was Emmanuel Churaskin. He wrote books on the magic of vitamin C for the mouth. But the other one was one that was relatively unknown back in the 90s. And I had a friend, Steven Sinatra, who recently passed. He did the most amount of research on it. He's a cardiologist. And it was coenzyme Q10. So CoQ10 and vitamin C were fantastic. And I started experimenting, mixing this up in the back of the office and applying it on one side to the gums of patients' teeth. And lo and behold, gums stopped bleeding in a matter of days. So because vitamin C and CoQ10 are so powerful for oral health, for not only healthy gums, but healthy teeth. The other thing, I agree with Paul, fat-soluble vitamins, but we used vitamin D3 and K2. So Revitin has 3 patents on vitamin C and CoQ10 that we got back in early 2000s. And then we put vitamin D3 and K2, which are the gatekeepers for calcium metabolism. And then in addition to that, vitamin E and even MSM, which is a connective tissue enhancer, and actually stimulates stem cell releases in periodontal ligaments. So really, really fascinating. So what is all this? What Paul was talking about, what I was talking about for your question, Steve, healthy teeth need healthy nutrition. And that's a big thing. So much bad nutrition and lack of essential fatty acids and oils, really.
how do we keep our gums healthy and avoid pockets?
All right, Paul, you got to take that
I'm
one.
sorry, I don't mean to be laughing about that. It's a serious thing, but well, I think we have to, it goes back to nutrition. Obviously, people are genetically predisposed a bit, but if the nutrition is right and if they can rebalance, you know, look, I mean, the major diseases that are considered truly epidemic, pandemic is gum disease and tooth decay. Those things are a bacterial imbalance. So if we can calm the bacteria that are causing it down, and then we can rebalance the area again, as I mentioned earlier in the show, with the like Jerry has prebiotic, probiotic, etc., to encourage the overgrowth of healthy beneficial bacteria, we can get back to back to a healthy mouth and gums. So, for example, even on the probiotics that I have at Great Oral Health, we get so many people, they call in and within 3 to 5 days, 7 days, that's great. But I always tell people it's going to take about 3 weeks for the microbiome to change. But they tell us the bleeding starts going away, it drops down. What's happening? This is great. My hygienist says this is amazing. So, but again, we're sort of treating the symptoms there. The
Right.
real answer long-term is putting the correct nutrition back in that'll bring about this balance. And, you
Right.
know, a friend of mine's writing a book, it's called The Unholy Trinity. And of course, it's the big problem out there is carbohydrates, sugar, and the bad cooking oils that are being used. So couple that with good nutrition on top of that, get rid of the sugars, get rid of the refined carbohydrates, and you're going to have not only healthy teeth and gums, but
Get rid of the
you'll
bad
have
oils
a
like
better
canola
lung.
oil and all those.
Yeah, you're going to feel all the other illnesses and disease. They're reflective many times in bad health that we see in the mouth. So if the mouth is healthy and it's strong, generally the body is pretty strong and healthy.
Yeah, one of the greatest educations that I received as a dentist was from a medical doctor who I met back in the early 90s, who, if you had something wrong in your body, if you had anything from breast cancer, prostate cancer, autoimmune disease, or whatever else, chronic fatigue or anything, the first place he would look was your mouth. And his name was Thomas Rau, and he had a clinic called the Paracelsus Clinic in Switzerland. And he did remarkable things with patients. And it just opened me up to really going over there myself and spending time and really looking at this amazing philosophy of biologic medicine, which says this: our bodies have this divine life force that gives us the ability to self-regulate and heal. And what gets in the way of that life force is interference on a number of different levels: biologic, biochemical, energetic, psycho-emotional, and spiritual. And those 5 levels on the bottom level, biologic, people don't realize that gum disease is the body's #1 source of chronic inflammation that's linked to everything from Alzheimer's disease to colorectal cancer. Colorectal cancer, the #1 bacterium found in colorectal tumors is Fusobacterium nucleatum, which is the most common bacteria in the mouth. And so I always look at a patient as this divine life force that's inhabited by the tent of the body. And I always respect that their ability to heal. And what we do as dentists is we help them on their path, whether it is helping to rebalance, as Paul said from the beginning, their microbiome in their mouth, to really even helping them understand how their body, they are a composite of species: mind, body, and spirit. And that spirit in biologic medicine we call a field. It extends 1.5 feet from our body, and it can extend. We can expand that even more. But that field is your life force, and that we call spirit here. In Ayurveda, they call it prana, and in Chinese medicine, they call it qi. But that's foundational to understand how to be healthy, and that's the real truth about health. The real truth about health is understanding that, in my opinion.
I agree with that completely. Yeah, well said, Jerry.
Thank you.
What is the best to worst filling for cavities?
The best or worst? The best or worst?
Best to worst. That's the best, then second best, third best. Go down the list from
Paul
best.
and I are going to agree on the worst.
Yeah.
Mercury.
Yeah. Yeah, we
Yep.
would have gotten lynched 20 years ago. Now we can say it easily.
You could say it. Amalgam fillings are probably the
Amalgam,
most
which is
barbaric introduction to dentistry.
Yeah, well,
They found out that before amalgam, and in the 1700s, they were using lead. They were melting lead and putting lead in teeth.
But
heavy metal
Jerry,
poisoning-
we know mercury is 1,000 times even more toxic than lead.
Yeah.
And everybody, if you
Yes.
told someone, look, I'm going to put a filling in your mouth that has a little bit of lead, a little bit of arsenic, but you'll be okay. Most people would say, well, hell no. But now we say, I'm going to put an amalgam in your mouth. Well, what's in it? Well, it's a little bit of mercury, but it binds in there. It's like, oh, okay. The truth is they dumbed it down and they made it they call it an amalgam. It's made it like a euphemism, but it's 53% mercury. And that mercury comes out 24/7. The science is irrefutable on the thing. I mean, every test shows that it does it and goes to every major organ in the body. So that's the worst one. I don't know the best. The best one, I will say it this way. I wouldn't necessarily give it a name, but it would be an engineering type. It would mimic the nature of the tooth. So for example,
physical properties of the tooth. Yep.
yeah, the dentin flexes at a certain rate. So you want to replace the dentinal part of the tooth with a composite material or a material that flexes at a similar rate and doesn't break down and doesn't stress the tooth. And then the top surface, the enamel-like surface, you want to replace it with something that can withstand the same forces that enamel can withstand. And there's maybe 8 to 10 that are in that gold standard, I would say, from the adhesive aspect to the actual physical materials. Wouldn't you say, Jerry? I think it's about 8
no, I totally agree. And I would say the best restoration is a restoration that is exactly what Paul said. It's the most conservative biologic material. We have a lot of filling materials. I would say the second to the worst next to an amalgam filling, which dentists are really making a fraudulent misrepresentation if they call it a silver filling, because it's 51 to 52% mercury, 26% silver. And I think a lot fewer of those fillings would be done if a dentist said, hey, Susie, I'm going to put a mercury filling in the back, but you're not going to see it. And so a lot of people don't know that. They're like, there's mercury in that. But probably second to that is the unsafe removal of that material and the placement of a composite that has bisphenols. The most common composite plastic resin material that many of us used for years was something called bis-GMA resin. And we were like, yeah, it's bonding material. It's bis-GMA resin. Well, that stands for bisphenol A, BPA, glycidyl methacrylate. And they did a study on kids with these flowable composites done in their teeth, and they found 434 children that it was an extraordinary percentage of them that suffered from hyperactivity disorder from excess BPAs being emitted from these tooth-colored fillings. So yes, the materials have gotten better. Adhesive dentistry, the ability to do this conservative, natural, mimicking the natural tooth. Biomimetic means mimicking the body. And I would say that this biomimetic materials that we use would definitely complement the natural physical properties of the tooth.
How do we prevent cavities and cracked teeth?
A balanced occlusion, proper restoration. So proper function is really important. By the way, people crack teeth a lot because of fluoridation. So fluorapatite is prone to fracture. Like, you got to think of taking your teeth and turning it into glass. Very hard, but we see all these microfractures in teeth. And what's really been difficult is teeth that have a really hard outer surface, and then they crack, and then bacteria get through those cracks to the soft organic part of the tooth, softer organic part, which is called the dentin. And on a dental x-ray, it's very hard to see through this dense glass, just like this blue cobalt blue glass. And the problem with that is a lot of cavities don't get seen in the dentin until they're gigantic and near root canal. And so that's why diagnostic tools like 3D cone beam and transillumination are better, because regular dental x-rays don't show these cavities that easily. And they end up becoming, we call these fluoride bombs, because it's fluoridated enamel and we can't see the decay underneath.
Okay, I think we lost Dr. O'Malley. So Dr. Curatola, you have time to take questions from the audience?
Yes, sure.
Okay. Gloria, would you like to ask a question, and where are you from? Priscilla, would you like to ask a question, and where are you from?
Hello, I'm from California. What does he think about flossing and water picks?
Flossing and water picks?
Yes.
Yeah, no, I think, listen, flossing, if it's done properly, remember, you have these tight spaces between your teeth. They're called the interproximal contacts, where two teeth come together. And the reason why floss has been so popular for so many years, it's one of the dental devices that can slide between that contact and really help lasso the tooth and eliminate that biofilm that forms, which is often unhealthy. By the way, that biofilm, when it's healthy, doesn't need to be removed. When it's unhealthy, it usually contains organisms and what we call anaerobic bacteria and spirochetes and all kinds of things when that microbiome is out of balance. So flossing is fine. What's not fine is if flossing is not done properly, snapping it down to the gum. You don't need to snap it down to the gum. I am a real fan of interproximal brushes, interproximal picks, like you said. And I also love this device called the water flosser, which is, it's really good for removing debris and also stimulating circulation and massage of your gums.
Joan, would you like to ask a question, and where are you from?
Yes, I'm from Chicago area. I use Jerry's toothpaste, the Revitin, on my mouth at night because I have dry mouth, missing a salivary gland. Is this a good idea to help keep it more moist and do good things for my mouth?
Thank you, Joan. And yes, you can use the Revitin on your gums like a mask because it's edible. You can swallow it. I wanted to make a product that was that children could swallow without having to have a poison warning, of course, but also would be therapeutic enough and nutritionally oriented. So it really is good for dry mouth and for any gums that are inflamed. You can rub it on like a mask, apply it to your gums at night before you sleep, and leave it like just like a face mask. You can have a gum mask.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
As, would you like to ask a question? David, would you like to ask a question? And where are you from?
Yes, this is David from Massachusetts.
Okay, I'm sorry.
Hi, it's from Massachusetts.
Okay, go ahead, David. Go ahead.
Yeah, so I would like to ask you a question. What is your recommended protocol for extraction if a patient needs extraction in order to prevent the cavitation that you spoke about? And if a patient needs an implant, and for the implant he needs a bone graft, what are the options of bone graft and what you recommend for bone graft? Thank you.
David, that's an excellent question. Are you a dentist?
No.
Oh, okay. That's a very educated question there. You have a very high dental IQ. The first question was about the first question?
Protocol for extraction.
For extraction, thank you. So when you're removing a tooth, there are, unfortunately, for many, many years, dentists and oral surgeons were focused on just getting the tooth out as least traumatically and as quickly as possible. Unfortunately, the most important part of the procedure is the follow-up after that part. And that is making sure that all the periodontal ligaments are removed and that it's fully curetted. I actually use a laser around the bony socket. I use a laser to literally vaporize those periodontal ligaments. The second thing you want to do is you want to make sure that there's a good blood supply to the socket, because remember, blood in the bone is the life supply of that bone. And that's how you really can heal. If you don't have good blood supply to that area, it becomes necrotic and it dies. The third thing is that you want to use a graft. And the best material as the matrix for that graft is platelet-rich fibrin has been very popular. Why? Because we used to use synthetic membranes, collagen membranes that dissolve. Now we could take your own blood, spit it down at a lower RPM, and remove this part of the blood called the platelet-rich fibrin. It also has mesenchymal stem cells. So it has your body's own stem cells, which help to differentiate and help that area to heal. One of the final things that you were speaking about is the different types of graft material, because that platelet-rich fibrin should be mixed with some mineral graft. There are 5 types of mineral: synthetic, which is not really good at all and has difficulty dissolving. And then you have bovine, which is cow bone, pig bone. Very often it can be painful and could lead to more issues with the healing process. But we use a bone mineral. It's a sterile bone mineral, and everyone says, "Oh, is it from a cadaver?" Yet they get a blood supply or a bag of blood and a blood transfusion from another person as well. So I always bless the bone and then use that, because remember, it's temporary. It's going to dissolve as your body makes new bone, the graft resolves.
He has his own toothpaste.
So I hope that helps. Oh, you had a loaded question. I tried to answer about treating the area after. Were you talking about different materials for implanting?
No, just for bone graft, and I think
bone
you answered.
grafting.
So what were your bone graft recommendation out of all the one that you
the one that the body recognizes and resorbs while your body's making bone that's resorbing is human bone, and it's usually a graft donor cadaver bone, and everybody has, oh, they don't know, and so there's, even though there is some maybe some people have some mental or emotional or religious objections to the donor of somebody else donating bone, just like donating a heart or a lung or an eye, or there are people that have problems with organ donation. However, that material acts as the best matrix while your body's making new bone. That's been my experience.
Thank you so much, Doctor.
My pleasure.
Rita, would you like to ask a question, and where are you?
Hi, this is Rita from Long Island, and thank you very much, Steve, for bringing this brilliant dentist over here. Dr. Curatola, you know that most people will use the Crest as a toothpaste. So on an ongoing basis, which, the Crest toothpaste would you recommend? And if not, which toothpaste the people should be using?
Excellent question, Rita. Most commercial toothpaste is, you have to, if you read the ingredients of most commercial toothpaste, you'll find that it's flavored detergent, and the addition of fluoride, which we spoke about all the harmful issues with fluoride, is one of the reasons why I really stay away from any toothpaste with those chemicals. Sodium lauryl sulfate which is a common ingredient in commercial toothpaste, leads to the formation of canker sores for people. And there's a study from the University of Oslo in Norway linking that chemical, sodium lauryl sulfate, which makes toothpaste foam up like soap, because it was made by soap makers 100 years ago. I was on the Martha Stewart show, and she asked me about my work in oral care research. And I said, toothpaste is basically flavored detergent. And, you had soap for your hair, soap for your skin, soap for your clothes, and you had soap for your mouth. Fluoride was put in the 1960s. We thought it was a good idea. Then they put other chemicals in to kill germs. So most commercial toothpaste is a mess, not to mention the artificial sweeteners, the artificial colors, by the way, the bright blue color, the fluorescent blue color, that's made from coal tar, which is a known carcinogen. So not a fan of that. There are some natural toothpaste. The toothpaste that I spent 20 years of my life developing, Revitin, which is Revitin. If you go to revitin.com, I think we have a code for this conference that we're giving to Stephen. You'll have a code where people can get a 15% discount on Revitin if they want to try it. But that's a great one. I spent a long time, and I don't want to seem like I'm self-promoting here, but I created this product because of my passion to have something that actually works with the science and respects the science and is safe for everyone and is more nutritional, because that's what we need most of all. So you have vitamin C, vitamin E, CoQ10, MSM, and minerals and prebiotic minerals. So one of the other things, there's another product called Waleda, WALEDA. There's Paul, who was on, who has a probiotic toothpaste, which is good. These products are much better, much safer, and much healthier than most of the commercial brands, Rita.
And what about the Ayurvedic toothpaste?
Some of the Ayurvedic toothpaste can be good. As a matter of fact, Waleda uses a number of Ayurvedic ingredients. However, there are some Ayurvedic ingredients that do the same thing that some pharmaceutical ingredients do to kill bacteria. So, like for example, neem can be really, neem is a very popular Ayurvedic ingredient. And neem can be very powerfully antimicrobial as well. Oil pulling, which always comes up in discussions. Oil pulling is fine, but not as an everyday practice, because it's a detergent practice of removing harmful plaque from between the teeth. And as you know, the Ayurvedic practice of oil pulling is a 20-minute procedure with I'm trying to think, the sunflower seed oil and coconut oil has been replaced and used a lot. And I love coconut oil. It's such a great nutrient. But you can do oil pulling for a short term, but not as a long-term practice.
So the Revitin, the spelling is Revitin?
Yes.
Okay. So under any circumstances, regardless of the teeth problem you have, you should use Revitin.
Yes.
Great. So what is the code,
Can use
Steve?
Revitin.
Thank you, doctor. What is the code, Steve?
Oh, we'll have that code on the website. We'll probably have it tomorrow. It should have been up today. But I'll make sure that we have the code to the real truth about health, and you could probably pick it up tomorrow.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Gail, would you like to ask a question, and where are you from?
Yes, I'm from Oklahoma City, and I would like to know if you have any experience using Steiner Bio bone grafting in implants.
Steiner biografting.
Steiner.
No, I'm not familiar, but I have heard of it, but I'm not familiar with it.
Okay, that we
Is it
heard
human
about
bone?
that at the no, it is not human bone.
Okay.
And I can't remember I'm a dental hygienist, and
oh, great.
we were at the Ozone conference a couple weekends ago, and there was a periodontist that presented about that. And so I'm trying to find people who have some experience with it. I have 40 years
Sure.
experience in periodontal disease, and I mean in periodontics, and I'm moving
Okay.
over to biological to a biological dentist. Also,
Oh,
do you
that's
use
fantastic.
oral
I
DNA?
actually, Gail, I want to look into that, and I'm not familiar with it, but I have heard of it before. And it may
Yeah,
be.
the doctor's name is Roger Steiner, and it was very interesting. They were able to recreate striations in the bone. And his histological presentation of bone morphology was amazing. Never anything I've ever heard, and I've been to more conferences than you can imagine.
Fabulous. Well, I just wrote
bone
it. I just
regeneration.
wrote it down. So thank you. Thank you for that information.
Okay. Do you also use oral DNA when you're looking at
That's a good question.
pathogens?
That's a really good question. Oral DNA I use as a general guide. It is not good for specific. Some people get very hung up on the specifics, and I'll tell you why it's not good for specifics, because it's not really looking at the basal layer of the microbiome. It's looking at what we call planktonic bacteria or free floating bacteria, which tend to be predominantly pathogens. So people see all these pathogens and they get all upset. The reality is that and looking, if everything's in the red, you get that chart at the end. If everything's in the red, you have a pretty good amount of dysbiosis, even though you're only looking at the planktonic bacteria, the free floating. Because remember, a lot of times it's from saliva, and you're not really at the basal level. Believe it or not, to look at the basal microbiome, and we've done some great studies with a company, Cosmos ID, just did a 40-patient double-blind clinical research study with Revitin, and we were able to get samples of some of the base microbiome. But the best way to study the microbiome is without disturbing it, and you see the whole architecture. But those are tests using confocal laser microscopy and atomic microscopy, which are very sophisticated diagnostic tools that are not usually available to the average person.
Absolutely. Well, I also work with an integrative medicine dentist who uses this. She's sent her patients over by medical doctors and functional doctors who can't seem to resolve medical problems in their patients and feel like something may be going on in their mouth. So the use of the oral DNA, yes, and then the use of the oral DNA, and then they'll show you a GI map as well if things show up, and then correlate those together and do some periodontal treatment on the patient. And we have seen absolute amazing things happens to include things like, Fusobacterium reduction in the mouth, and in the gut, and tumor shrinking, and all kinds of crazy things. I don't know that this is being done much with very many dentists. I think she's pretty
No, you're
unique,
absolutely right. I'm actually going to be launching an online program for dentists and dental hygienists, and I would love to get your information. You can actually DM me on my Instagram is at Dr. Jerry Curatola, Jerry with a G. But you could DM me. Anyone can, and I'm happy to share more information or answer questions. So it's
that would be great.
At DRGERYCURATOLA. I also have some interesting guides on the top 10 sources of toxicity and inflammation in the mouth, and things about the cavitation protocol that I created years ago to treat jaw cavitations. So thank you, Gail. Thank you for that information.
All right. Thank you.
Sure.
Stacy, would you like to ask a question, or where are you from?
Yes, I'm Stacy from New York.
Yay.
I wanted to ask a question. I went to a holistic dentist. We thought that I needed a root canal. She told me I can do an alternative treatment. She cleaned it out, used ozone, put her, I forgot the name of the cover that she covered the hole with. And she said that there was a chance that I could still need a root canal. So a year later, she said, oh, you have an infection and you need a root canal. So she sent me to the endodontist, he said, oh, you have an infection. I can't do the root canal. You probably need an implant. So now he said, you need to go to a periodontist. So now I'm like, nobody's trying to treat the infection. So what do I do about that?
I hate
Do
these
need an
stories.
I
I hear
an
a lot of these,
implant?
Stacy, where, oh, now I had to go from one thing to like two other dentists and then a third dentist and then a fourth dentist. And you're in this merry-go-round and no one's getting to the root cause.
And I have an infection.
And that's the root cause. You have an infection. So, I mean, without seeing your records, it's hard for me to give you an opinion about that. But again, I appreciate what your holistic dentist was trying to do, because I do think, and Dr. O'Malley was speaking about that earlier, that there are ways. For example, I use ozone. I think every dentist should have ozone right before they use a dental drill. They should have ozone. And the reason why is because ozone helps to literally decay, just kind of flakes off the tooth without having to use a mechanical drill. And the other thing that ozone does is it disinfects and it brings oxygen and it improves blood supply for the tooth to heal. So one of the ozone is great for a tooth that has a deep cavity like it sounds you had. The other thing that's really good is the laser. And the laser helps block the dental tubules and kill any remaining bacteria. And it kind of seals the area where the decay was. That's what the laser does. And then you could put a restoration on the tooth. So yes, does it work? Yes, it can work. It sounds like yours might have been deeper, or you may have already had bacterial infiltration into the central part or the pulp. So if you have an abscess there, I encourage you to really get that treated as soon as possible, and don't get off the merry-go-round of referrals to other dentists, and get somebody who was listening to you to eliminate that infection. Probably a dental extraction would be in order. Now, remember, the dental extraction, getting the tooth out is not the easy part, but it's just the first part. The more important part is treating the infection, disinfecting the area, and getting you to heal properly and normally. Then you have an option for other restorations, whether a ceramic, a zirconia dental implant, or a bridge, or even a removable appliance are a number of options for you to be restored.
So do I do that with the periodontist or the endodontist? Or
whoever's going to remove?
Come to
I mean, are they holistic? Are they biologically?
Not the one she's sending me to is not. So that's
Okay,
why I was doing research.
No, they will not understand what I'm saying.
Right.
They will not understand the importance of ozone. They will not understand the importance of disinfecting the area. I would encourage you to see a biologic dentist in New York, and guess what? I'm one.
Okay,
I'm not trying.
No,
we have an amazing team of dentists. So
okay, I will definitely call.
Yeah, with pleasure. We're happy to see you, Stacy, but you need to be, with someone who's conscious of what the root cause is.
Okay, thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Karina, would you like to ask a question, and where are you from?
Hello, yes, I would like to ask a question. I'm from Sammamish, Washington State. My question is about supplement calcium hydroxyapatite. Is it okay to take orally to improve from within the body the strength, like the strength of the teeth?
Could you tell me the supplement again, Karina?
The calcium hydroxyapatite.
Oh, calcium hydroxyapatite. Okay, that's a mineral. And as long as it's not nanoparticle, I am a fan of it. But taking it systemically is not going to be as effective for your teeth as applying it topically. So systemically, I recommend you stimulate calcium metabolism with vitamin D3, K2, and a lot of times you can get that supplement with the D3 and the K2 in the proper proportion to each other. That stimulates calcium formation and helps with remineralization. Omegas, really important to take systemically. The other one is there are collagen supplements and collagen peptides, some of which are very good, that can be helpful to stimulate stronger teeth and bones.
All
Paul's
right.
back. All right, Paul,
Thank you.
take over.
Hey, how are you? Sorry about that, gang. Driving into the sun. Well, I'm not actually driving, thank goodness.
Okay, thank you, Karina.
Thank you.
Priscilla, would you like to ask a question, or where are you from?
Hello, I am from Indio, California. What do you think about taking jellies for dry mouth? Jellies tablets.
Jellies for dry. Oh, Deli's tablets, the ones that stick on the side of your cheek. Is that the one you're talking about?
Yes.
You know, I don't have a lot of information on that one, so I'd have to look at the ingredients and see, just to make sure that there's nothing in there that could cause any harm.
One of the ingredients in a lot of these tablets, and you should check for this, Priscilla, is the use of xylitol. It was really introduced into the dental market and the natural product market as a natural sugar substitute. It is not natural. It is a chemical. It is made by an industrialized process of hydrogenation, and it disrupts very, very, it's not absorbed or metabolized by the human body, and it is very disruptive to the microbiome. I have some of my holistic dentist friends who are religious about xylitol, and they love it, and they really don't understand the harmful effects. And there were studies, they point to science about it. I would recommend against xylitol, against erythritol, which a lot of press came out about recently, erythritol being linked to embolisms and heart attacks and thrombocytic clots. And the reason for that is erythritol is a chemical from, I believe, a wood alcohol that where it is absorbed into the body and the body can't get rid of it. It can't metabolize it. Xylitol is not absorbed or metabolized, which is why people get diarrhea and gas when they swallow it. And it's disruptive to the oral microbiome. So unfortunately, it finds its way into a lot of oral care products, and it doesn't belong there. It really is not a friend of the microbiome. So
what do you,
I don't know about, but they use it. The reason I bring it up is xylitol is used in a lot of xerostomia cases. People that have dry mouth, chronic dry mouth called xerostomia, they use xylitol, and it is not the ingredient of choice. So
what do you recommend for dry mouth?
Oh, that's a tough one. I think, as earlier, I actually have my patients rubber Vitin on their gums at night and leave it on. It protects, helps keep the microbiome balanced. The problem with some of these supplements is they sneak in all these ingredients. So I really agree with Paul. Read the ingredients and read, what the ingredients do.
Thank you. Thank you.
Sure.
Also, you could try a product that's my company makes it, but it does help a lot of people with dry mouth. It's an essential oil, and you just rub it around your gums, and you don't swallow it or anything like that. You just rub it around, and it can stimulate the saliva glands. It's called Aura Restore Essential Great Oral Health. You can try it, see if it's helpful. We're working on another one that's supposed to stimulate the saliva quite a bit more, but we're getting some good reports that it's helping people with their dry mouth syndrome. And it's quite nicely antibacterial at the same time.
Okay, thank you, Priscilla. Rochelle, would you like to ask a question, and where are you from?
Yes, hi. I'm from Long Beach, New York. I read that zirconium crowns can cause dry mouth. I'm about to get zirconian crowns, so I'm concerned about that. And my other question is, has there been any progress on stem cells, using stem cells to regenerate, well, actually, instead of implants or invasive dental work, like, root canals?
They've already been able to grow tissue from stem cells that has differentiated into tooth. It's very early on. Unfortunately, I don't know if it was the Italians or the Israelis, one of them had been working on this, implanting stem cells. They've regenerated gums, they've regenerated bone. That's one of the reasons why we use PRF. It's a wonderful, because there is, depending on your age, quite a predominance of stem cells in your blood that can be extracted through the platelet-rich fibrin. So, unfortunately, the research is not at the level where we can really regenerate a tooth. As for the dry mouth from the zirconia, I'm not a big fan of zirconia crowns. I think they're very hard. I think, and as Dr. O'Malley, was sharing earlier, really, a lot of crowns can and should be avoided. And really, we should be using materials that mimic the natural physical properties of the tooth. Paul, I'll let you add more to that. But have you had any experience with dry mouth from zirconia?
Causing dry mouth.
Does it cause dry mouth?
That I've not.
I haven't.
That I'm not familiar with. But I'll tell you something else. There's a better alternative material to be used, like Emax and things like this. If you have to get a crown over an implant, if you have to get a crown over a tooth, because on X-ray you can see through them. After the restoration's done, in the future, you can actually see the base of the tooth through them. With zirconia, because it's a transitional metal, even though when they heat it, they call it sintering, it apparently turns more into a glass. But the X-ray still picks it up like a metal, and it reflects back. So you can't see you can't even really see how perfect the seal is of the restoration. So to the caller that just asked the question, see if your dentist not doing crowns, number one, doing onlays, and number two, if they can work with you with Emax, if they have to do a crown or an onlay, much superior properties.
So, and I agree. I use a lot of Emax, and one of the things that we know is that it's a lithium disilicate, and there's a lot of aluminums that are used in ceramic materials, and aluminum can have adverse effects long term, especially in the interaction with saliva and with grinding and wear of some of these ceramics. So I would stay away from aluminum disilicate. I'm a fan of lithium disilicate. Again, as Paul said, a lot of these materials become, as Dr. O'Malley said, I'm sorry, Paul, they turn into a glass. So if you're reacting to the zirconia, I'm just thinking you might it might not be compatible for you. Have you ever done a dental materials compatibility test?
Oh, she's muted.
Oh, okay. But I would recommend for people that have weird reactions like dry mouth to things, and
I think it would be interesting to find out about that too. Yeah, if it's from the material or what, but I think to the caller in, if you can get to Emax, it's a much superior material, and it mimics a little bit more closely the characteristics of enamel. The problem with zirconia is very, very hard, and eventually we'll see what it does to the surrounding tissues, implants included, the surrounding teeth. It's just so darn hard and brittle. We'll see over time, but dentists love it because it doesn't break. So that solves the problem for that. But sometimes we'd rather something break than it ruin the tooth underneath.
Okay. All right. We're going to go last three questions, and and once you ask your question, you're going to be muted so it goes faster Oh, because it's a little bit late. So Anna, would you like to ask a question, and where are you from?
Hi, my name is Anna. I'm from Chicago. I recently saw Dr. Curatola for 3 cavitations. Hi, doctor.
Hey, Anna, how are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you. So my question is regarding my biopsies, right? So you took the biopsy of the 3 cavitations that you fixed. And I went to my doctor just this Tuesday, and she had no idea what to do with it. She literally just told me to go home.
You know what? Let's have a conversation offline about that, but I have some recommendations for you. I don't want to violate HIPAA or anything like that.
I see. Okay.
In terms of your particular case, but I would like to speak with you about that and get you into good hands, because my doing a cavitation procedure needs to be followed up by the appropriate functional medicine doctor, biologic medical doctor, and I have a couple of recommendations for you if you don't have already.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Cynthia, would you like to ask a question, and where are you from?
Hi, I'm from New York, and I'd like to know if you could recommend some gum disease maintenance protocols for me.
Paul?
Hello?
Yes.
I didn't get the question.
Oh, I have gum disease. I was wondering what kind of maintenance do you recommend for gum disease?
Well, I think Cynthia, we need to assess, the severity. So, a periodontal disease starts with gingivitis, then there's early periodontitis, and then moderate, and then advanced. So it's really important to get a look at that. I'd recommend a CBCT. I'd recommend a periodontal chart, and then come up with the plan. One of the things I can tell you just that might be helpful is laser periodontal therapy. So laser periodontal therapy has really replaced a lot of people that would normally have needed gum surgery, can do this less invasive, more regenerative procedure that does 3 things. It doesn't hurt. It actually helps to eliminate pathogens that are embedded in the gingival lining with the laser light. And then the other thing it does is it helps to stimulate regeneration of the tissue so that it reattaches to the tooth. So that's why laser perio we're big fans of. But again, you should be examined and given options, but we need to know where you are on the spectrum before recommendations can be made.
I agree. And then one of the things you should do until you get in with the dentist to have that evaluated, if you have a water pick, you can put different agents in there. You can put some of the essential oils in there. You can put some salt in there, things like that that can help create some healing. You can find a good oral probiotic to start getting some balance until you get in there, because by the time you get in to see the dentist, you can have some healing effect that's going on. Also, you want to make sure that you're not only water picking, but sometimes you can even make sure you're stimulating the gums well with a good soft bristle toothbrush. Some people, their gums start bleeding a little bit and they back off. They go, oh boy, something's not right. I'm going to go softer, slower, easier, or maybe not at all. And that's an error. So what you're doing is you're actually going to stimulate
You're breaking up, Paul. Sorry.
Let it flush out.
Paul, it's not coming through.
Start going away, especially if you use
Okay. I'm going to go on next question. Alice, would you like to ask a question, and where are you from?
California. For the average person, what is the best dental insurance you can get?
There is no good dental insurance. The simple answer is dentistry was never looked at by the insurance companies as essential. And you want to know what's interesting about that? In 2006, Aetna Healthcare did a study on 145,000 patients at Columbia Medical Center in New York, and they found that just improving the health of the gums lowered healthcare costs by an average of 21% for the three most expensive systemic diseases: diabetes, 23%, cardiovascular disease, 21%, and cerebral vascular disease, 19%. Improving the health of the gums just by some additional periodontal treatment, which could be covered by insurance, could lower healthcare costs on an average of $750 billion, $720 billion a year could be saved by improving the health of the gums for the management of systemic disease. And that's the sad part. And still the insurance companies do not step up and offer patients the coverage that they deserve and they should have to get the care that they need. And so that's my little, I'm sorry, I got a little political there, but you brought up a good question. Dental insurance sucks. And I don't know how to put it any other way. So
Yeah,
there's no good private
it's
policy.
abysmal. It's rather abysmal. And in the 1960s, you could get $1,000 coverage. If it kept up with inflation, you'd get $8,500 right now. But it's still at a lousy $1,500 per year,
Exactly.
which is good if you have a big family and the children need some hygiene cleanings and things like that. But the minute you need any type of restoration, you used it all up and well beyond that. So it's very frustrating, and it's sad. Those are great statistics you go over, Jerry, because people that are out there listening, they can call their representatives, et cetera, and say, hey, this is the statistic, this is what we need, can we push for this?
The Aetna study on periodontal disease of 2006. By the way, that study was repeated in Japan with the exact same statistics. And the criminal part of that is that they never gave people the additional coverage of even an extra cleaning a year. It's 2 cleanings, not 3 or 4, which some people need because of the condition they may have. But at any rate, we'll get the last question.
Last question of the night. Juliet, would you like to ask a question, and where are you from?
Yeah, sorry, I am not Juliet, I'm John Handel, but Juliet asked me to ask these questions. First of all, not Juliet, that's for sure. We are from California. Juliet is a friend of mine. And, first of all, listening to this conference, it's so, you are miles and miles ahead from the average dentist that I've seen. This is put it mildly. So my question for her and for me also, how do I go by finding a good dentist? It's kind of an unfair question. Maybe you can help in that way.
Well, you have a California dentist in a car to the right. It was a good dentist. But it's a good question.
Yeah, I mean,
why don't you answer that,
it is
Paul?
interesting. People travel around the country, and I'm on the board of the Academy of Biomimetic Dentistry. We put together protocols for the other, which then they have to show with videography and photography that they're doing the exact steps we talk about to preserve the pulp, prevent root canals, and build teeth minimally invasively, etc. On the holistic side, you can look up through the International Academy of Oral Medicine and Toxicology.
IAOMT.org. The only
you can find a
proviso
list
I
of
would
people
put,
there,
yeah.
T.org. Keep in mind, both of these organizations, what's that?
No, the only proviso.
I was going to say, keep in mind that both of these organizations, you're basically gives you a list of names, and then you have to do your own questioning. How long have they been practicing? What do they think about crowns? What do they think about minimally invasive dentistry? Why did they choose holistic medicine, dentistry, biologic dentistry, etc.? Interview the dentists, go on their website, look at what their philosophy is, and when you meet them, do they really reflect that in person?
Exactly.
I'll tell you one last thing on this to answer this. Anybody that's watching this, just go, it's free to anybody that wants to watch it. It's called freeholisticdentalcourse.com. freeholisticdentalcourse.com. I made 22 or 24 short videos from A to Z on holistic, biomimetic, reconstructive, not prep heavily, the difference between a crown, onlay, etc. That's not to push myself. It's just to empower people so that you'll know what to look for when you go to the dentist. Now, that said, people who come see me, they've watched the videos, and I can't tell you the number of people that when I'm done with the procedure, they said, wow, I was paying attention, Dr. O'Malley, and you did every one of those steps that you talk about on your videos. And I say to myself, well, thank goodness I didn't skip anything, because I would have been busted. But they really learn a lot from those videos.
Okay, Dr. O'Malley, how do people stay in touch with you if they want to follow up with you and get more information from you? What's the best way?
Well, they can go to drpaulomalley.com. That's my website. The freeholisticdentalcourse.com is up on there. They can also go to my other company, greatoralhealth.com, and sign up and become a member there or learn about the system. Those are the best ways to stay in touch and see what's happening there. I'm pretty 100% sure I'm going to collaborate with this fellow friend here, Jerry, in the future, and we'll have some exciting stuff in the future, I hope.
Okay, and if you go to our website, to Dr. O'Malley, and click on his name, you could find his website. Dr. Curatola, how does someone follow up with you about your book, your toothpastes?
Sure.
Speaking to you, how's the best way?
Well, you could follow me at Dr. Jerry Curatola. You'll see all kinds of things on there. I'm posting all the time on all kinds of topics. It's at DRGERRYCURATOLA. My practice is Rejuvenation Dentistry. That's www.rejuvdentist, REJUVDENTIST.com. And my oral care company is Revitin.com, REVITIN.com.
And do both of you see patients online or only in person?
I do virtual consults almost every weekday. People have gotten used to it since one of the fallouts of the global I almost said the global pandemic.
Yeah,
global pandemic. That was a Freudian slip. That was a Freudian slip. But one of the fallouts of that is people feel very comfortable. They feel very comfortable speaking virtually, and I often, if you could get a cone beam locally in your community, and we can help you with that, we're happy to read that, and we can meet on a Zoom like this and really talk about all your individual needs. But that's actually a good question, because prior to COVID, I think people were reluctant to, they wanted to meet in person. And now it seems they're much more comfortable having that initial step and then deciding where they want to go from there.
And Dr. O'Malley, do you do virtual sessions also?
Yes, we do. It's on my website, drpaulomalley.com. And it guides a person through step-by-step, the things they can send to us, the questionnaire they fill out. And then I do a free complimentary evaluation for them. Even if they were to come to my office, I give them a ballpark figure of what something could cost if their mouth is a disaster. I specialize in complex cases and really situations where people feel hopeless, and there's no need to feel hopeless because there's so many cool, awesome things we can do. And we like to, if they send photos, x-rays, cone beam, etc., we can do the evaluation with the caveat that, this is as good as we can do until we meet you in person. But it kind of helps them get through a lot of sleepless nights, because a lot of times I can offer them, and I'm sure Jerry does the same thing, we can offer them a lot of hope.
Absolutely.
Well, I thank you both very much for sharing this difficult information. We really appreciate you taking 40 years to learn this and then sharing with us so generously. Both of you, if we could unmute everyone so everyone else can have a chance to thank them as well. We really appreciate you taking your time, staying late tonight, and sharing all this information with us.
Yeah, I think he understood it. I think most of it.
Thank you.
No. Call him again.
I'll call him again.
I think you.
Hey, thanks again, guys, for staying late. I really appreciate it. I'll be in touch.
Pleasure.
Thanks.
Okay.
Thank you. Bye. Jerry, I'll call you.
Okay, Paul, great
Bye-bye.
to be together.
Thank you.
Thank you. Likewise. That was a joy. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.